Hi, curious women out there. Thanks so much for listening in again tonight. It's July 15th, and this is gynecology. And tonight we're talking about something that I thought was seasonally important because I get asked all the time this summer, how can I skip my period? And is it safe to skip a period? I want to go to the beach. I want to wear a white bathing suit. I want to wear white pants. I want to just have a break from a period. We live in an amazing time when women have made some strides, anyway, in terms of owning their reproductive health with the invention of the birth control pill almost 55 years ago. But not all women know that you can use the birth control pill not just for reproductive control, but actually to control your periods as well. So we use the pill and many other forms of contraception now to control and time our periods so that if we have an important event or a sporting competition, or we have bad cramps or any other reasons why we don't want a certain um, time in our lives to be marked by menstruation, we can control that. So that's what I'm talking about tonight. I'm going to go backwards and first do a little basic GYN education, talking about a period. What is a period? I mean, everybody knows basically what a period is, but just to remind those of you who might not, a period is not cleaning your body. It is not a form of hygiene. I have many, many, many women who tell me they really want to have a period because their mother and grandmother told them it was a ritualistic cleaning, a way the body cleans itself. Mm-mm. Nothing clean or cleaning about it. A period is the shedding of the lining of the uterus. So the uterus, in response to estradiol, prepares for pregnancy every month by growing tissue on the inside cavity, called the endometrial cavity. So the endometrium is what we call the lining of the uterus, and this lining grows. It begins soon after you finish your previous period, and the uterus is stimulated by estrogen to grow these sort of building blocks of tissue. Progesterone is also important, but it's not important for growth. It's sort of important to stabilize that that bed, if you will, of cells. And so when a pregnancy occurs, the egg and sperm meet in the fallopian tube. They come together. The embryo then travels and implants in that cute little cozy bed in the uterus. If there's no pregnancy, then it's really the progesterone phase of the cycle that causes the breakdown or the withdrawal of the support of this little cozy lining bed. And since it's not needed, since the body signals that there is going to be no pregnancy this cycle, the estrogen primed lining sheds and is thrown out. So you are literally growing something in anticipation of a pregnancy every month. And if you, in fact, do not become pregnant, your body discards it. So, in this era of waste not, want not, eco friendly, recycle, reuse, repurpose, probably not necessary to be growing all this lining and shedding it every month. But a lot of women still feel it's natural, it's what our bodies do, and it's probably healthier to do that. So I do want to dispel that myth. It's perfectly fine to do it. If you have a period from age, 12 to 52 and never stop having a period, that's fine. Having a period is healthy and normal. However, not having a period intentionally by using a birth control pill or other ways can also have health benefits for you. And this is what is unknown to a lot of people. It's okay if you're using not just the pill, but many methods of hormonal birth control to not have a period. In fact, many methods have this as a well intentioned and desirable side effect. So let's go back to what is a period. And I talked about it being the shedding of the lining of the uterus. What's a normal period? Well, a normal period is usually bleeding around 3 to 5 days per month. Anywhere from 2 to 7 is still sort of acceptable as normal. I would say over 7, usually that's excessive bleeding, and you may want to talk to a clinician about improving that. Periods happen on average about every 28 days, but some women will have it as little as every 21, as much as every 35. That's still all in the ballpark of normal. If your periods are occurring closer than every 21 days or further apart than every 35 days, that's something to mention to a clinician and make sure there's nothing wrong. What do we call it when you have no period? So, just like the term asexual can mean someone who is devoid of sexuality, an asexual person or an agnostic person doesn't believe in God. So the a in front of a word can often mean without. So amenorrhea, amenorrhea. Good luck spelling that one. That's a tricky one. Amenorrhea is no period. Primary amenorrhea means you've never had a period. And so if you have never had a period by age 15, you have a diagnosis of primary amenorrhea and you want to go get that checked out. So over 15, come see a gynecologist and we'll figure it out. Secondary amenorrhea is when you had periods, either regular or irregular, and now you've stopped. So if you had regular periods and now you've stopped for more than 3 months, you have secondary amenorrhea, go get it checked out. If you had irregular periods, we give you a little more leeway. If you have irregular periods and you've had no period for 6 months, then that's your version of secondary amenorrhea, and you also want to go get that evaluated. So, again, a cycle length over 35 days or fewer than 9 periods a year should be evaluated. These are just some rough numbers to help you understand if you still fall within the bell curve of normal or if maybe it's time to go figure out what's going on. So let's talk about what things might cause secondary amenorrhea, okay? Because secondary amenorrhea is what I will commonly see in my practice. Women will come in saying, it's the weirdest thing. I've always had regular periods, and now I haven't had one since January. So the first thing, obviously, that you have to rule out is pregnancy. Is that woman sexually active? Are you sexually active? And are you having unprotected intercourse? And do you even know when you're fertile? I can't tell you how many women with advanced degrees and all kinds of accolades and Ivy League pedigrees come in. They have no idea that the only time you're truly fertile is this sort of 72-hour window around ovulation. Different topic, different gynecology. But for tonight, know that one very obvious cause of having no period when you used to have regular periods is that you could be pregnant. So make sure you're not pregnant, check pregnancy tests, have a clinician's office check a pregnancy test, or ask yourself, is the fact that my breasts are swollen and tender and that I'm nauseous and that I can't open my refrigerator without feeling nauseous, are these all things I've heard about? Yes, those are all classic symptoms of pregnancy. What about stress? People ask me that all the time, especially with the pandemic. I'm so stressed out. Could it be stress? Absolutely, it could be stress. We know that stressful life events, moving, divorce, um, loss of custody of your children, loss of a big job opportunity, caring for aging parents or a sick child. These are all significant stressors that can cause menstrual irregularity. Heck, I've had patients who their periods are so sensitive that if they just take an international flight, their period is off for that month. I have patients whose periods can be off just if their daughter or another woman living in the household has stress and that woman's period is off. So stress is a definite contributor to menstrual irregularity. Weight change, definitely. Weight gain or weight loss, even as little as 5 to 10 pounds, can throw a period off. An eating disorder is a more serious condition that needs attention. And a woman who comes to my office with no period ever, or no period for a long time, and has a really low body mass index, definitely an eating disorder is something we have to consider. Thyroid, if your thyroid is off, hyperthyroid, hypothyroid, if you're not sure or not sure what that is, if your periods are off and you come to a good clinician, a gynecologist, a nurse practitioner, they will consider whether it could be your thyroid. Um, Especially if you're in your 40s, menopause could be impending. And we know that menopause is not so simple that you have regular periods one day and then nothing after. There's the perimenopause, the transitional period, which can be a month or a decade, marked by hormonal irregularities that translate into period irregularities. So, certainly, menopause or perimenopause can be at play. What about premature menopause? What about having menopause under the age of 40? Is that even a thing? It is. It is. It's got a very unfortunate name, premature ovarian insufficiency, yet another patriarchy inspired name to make women feel inadequate and insufficient. But this happens when the ovaries um, decrease their production of hormones to such an extent and so early that menopause ensues under the age of 40. This is something that must be investigated, confirmed, and then treated because we don't want women going without estrogen in their 30s and 40s. Otherwise, they'll have acceleration of cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis. So, that is definitely something, if you're not having periods, to make sure you don't have. What about this word on the banner, prolactinoma in the brain? That sounds really scary. And sure enough, a prolactinoma is a small and benign brain tumor in the pituitary, right there in the brain. So what happens? The prolactin, the cells in the pituitary can kind of grow excessively, and they can shut down some of the signals in the brain that go to the ovaries, and then the ovaries in turn signal the uterus to have a period. So believe it or not, your lack of period can happen all the way up in your pituitary. One of the most common reasons to not have periods when you used to is because you have been recently on the birth control and decided to stop, or even stop and then resume. And people will often tell me, well, that doesn't sound safe. That's some problem with the pill. But honestly, the pill's just sort of doing its job. And if women are on the pill for a long time, their bodies are taught to not ovulate. That's how the birth control pill works. It prevents ovulation. So if the birth control pill is sort of shutting down this whole axis of communication that results in a period, once you come off the pill, many women will have a return to fertility and a period right away, but others will not. That shouldn't be scary. That should be something that you build into your reproductive family planning. So if you say, I have to get pregnant in October and I've been on the pill for 10 years, I wouldn't go off the pill in September. I'd go off in June or July and give yourself a couple months of buffer time. So this is just all a long-winded way of saying there are lots of ways, lots of causes for secondary amenorrhea, and um, most are not particularly scary. Most can be easily corrected by correcting a thyroid disorder, by normalizing weight, by reducing stress, or by just giving time. If you've gone off the pill, just sometimes a tincture of time. But I think that's really important to understand why you might skip a period when you don't want to. So now let's get to the more, I think, fun part of the talk, which is, what about if I want to skip a period? Not I'm worried because I am skipping periods. I have regular periods, but I want to skip them. I'm going to a wedding. I'm going to the beach. I get bad headaches with my period. I have endometriosis. Lots of reasons you might want to. Um, some women simply just want to skip because of hygiene. They can't afford their feminine hygiene products, or they have difficulty putting in a tampon, and they, don't want to use pads in the summer. Others have what we call menstrual migraines. These aren't necessarily always migraine headaches, but they're terrible headaches that occur in relation to hormonal changes of the menstrual cycle, and they can be debilitating. So, when women have menstrual migraines, it often happens because when they're on the birth control pill and they begin to take the placebo pill, this is a precipitous drop in estrogen. And it's the normal way that the body signals to have a period. So, a pill is just mimicking that. But it's that change in the estrogen level that triggers that terrible, terrible headache. So, by skipping the placebo pills, we can avoid those headaches. Really, the same thing for PMS. Many women are their PMS happens because of shifts in their own hormone levels. When we put them on the pill, it's a nice, boring, even level of estrogen and progesterone. So it softens some of the natural changes that happen in their cycle and limits their mood changes and their PMS symptoms. These are fantastic benefits to the birth control pill and fantastic reasons why you might want to skip the placebo pills and skip having a period at least a few months at a time. And I'll talk later about why you just want to do that a few months at a time. But let's review the list in the banner below why you might want to skip your period. So for cost, it's expensive to buy feminine hygiene products. For hygiene, some women don't like the smell of the blood or the staining of their clothes or sheets, um, or just how they feel. They just don't like how they feel with the period. To avoid menstrual migraines, to avoid PMS symptoms, to avoid having cramps. Period cramps can be debilitating, as can nausea, diarrhea, leg pain, back pain, the myriad symptoms that happen with periods. Some women actually have bleeding disorders, platelet disorders, for example, or von Willebrand's disease, where they bleed excessively because of dysfunction in the body's ability to clot. This is something we often diagnose in a young teenager who's first having her period, and her very first period looks like a crime scene, and every period thereafter looks like a crime scene. So we treat these women with birth control pill or with other medications that work on the ability to clot itself. But these are great patients to skip a period in because you're just avoiding, really, really heavy bleeding that sometimes lands them in the hospital and requires transfusion.
Mm.
And pelvic pain. Pelvic pain is something millions of women live with, whether that pain is from ovarian cysts or endometriosis. Um, I've had patients be so debilitated by their pelvic pain that they couldn't hold down a job, they couldn't stay married, they became suicidal. Pelvic pain is no laughing matter, it's very serious. And in many women, skipping their period is part of treating their pelvic pain. It's sort of softening these symptoms and at least allowing their body to be less erratic in what's going on. So, lots and lots of reasons why you might want to skip a period, and there's no shame in it. And remember, you're not missing the opportunity to clean your body. Please, please, if that's what you think, you got to throw that bad news out. Um, so, what are some of the risks of skipping a period? First of all, let's talk about how to do it. Okay, the simplest and most common way to skip a period is a birth control pill. If you're on the pill, you simply skip the placebo pills. Placebo pills are usually made of just sugar or vitamins and perfectly fine to take if you want to have a period, but perfectly fine to skip if you don't want a period. So I tell women often, if they want to skip a period, I want them to skip 2 months out of three. Why not just forever and skip all 12 months? Well, the reason is that it's hard for the body to do that because your body will want to make a little bit of that lining. So if you force it to try to skip month after month, it sometimes won't obey and you'll have what's called breakthrough bleeding. Breakthrough bleeding can be spotting, can be just little stain in your underwear, it can be heavy, it can be irregular and unpredictable. Most people don't like having breakthrough bleeding. So, the risks of trying to force your period to go away are that if you do it for many months, it's sort of like a dam that water will break through, and you risk having breakthrough bleeding. You also risk actually accidental pregnancy because if you're not having a period, often people are just not sure where they are in their cycle. And if they're pregnant, they may not know for quite a while. This happens rarely, um, especially in patients, for example, who have an IUD. The IUD is working, working, working for years and years. Their periods go to almost zero. They're so happy. And then they have a pregnancy, an unintended pregnancy, basically through failure of the contraception. Remember, even things like IUDs, which are super, super successful at preventing pregnancy, are not 100%. So every year I'll have one patient who says, I don't get it. I've used an IUD for 5 years and now I'm pregnant. So, not to scare you all, but that is certainly possible. So, that is one risk of having no period. But let's talk a little bit about having no period and is it okay to use hormonal methods to have no period? So, first of all, the answer is yes. Is it healthy to skip a period using an IUD like Mirena, Skyla? These are brands. Liletta is another brand. These are IUDs that contain progesterone. Progesterone's a hormone. And please, please do not think hormone is a bad word. Hormone is something in your body. I have so many patients that come in and say, I don't want anything with hormones because that's bad. They cause cancer. And this is just another example of whisper down the lane, inappropriate knowledge that gets passed along as truth. Um, Progesterone releasing IUD does not cause cancer. It can make your periods crazy light, incredibly light. And guess what? I have yet to meet someone who really didn't actually love that. Every so often, people don't. They say, "I just feel better if I bleed for 3 days." Well, then we find a different form of contraception for that patient. But IUDs will reduce menstrual bleeding by around 80%, which is, I think, tremendous. Most people are extremely happy with IUDs. Other forms of contraception, like a Depo-Provera shot, which is a shot of progesterone every 3 months, or a hormonal patch, rings like the Nuva ring. These will almost all make periods much, much lighter. The only contraceptives that really don't make your period lighter are those without hormones, like an IUD that has no hormones. Those can make your period heavier or just at least keep them the same. But the important thing to know is that having a period is healthy and normal if you're not using birth control, but not having a period when you're on hormonal birth control is totally okay also. Um, I think those were some of the most important things that I wanted to cover tonight. I think we covered how to skip it. What are the risks if you do skip periods? Why we skip periods? We also might want to. I just want to put a little shout out. Not that I'm not a fan of TikTok; it has its place, but be very, very careful about um, remedies to skip periods. There's a lot of information on all social media and on the internet in general. But I've seen some TikTok videos touting the use of everything from lemon juice to ice cubes. And maybe they worked for someone once by coincidence, but there's really no data behind a lot of the things that get listed on there. So do be careful. If you're not sure, some good websites you could always try are WebMD or Medscape, or you can always go on the Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins and Google through these medical schools. These are reputable places and they tend to have really evidence based advice. Our website, too, www.princetongyn.com, is chock full of ways for you to get information that you want, links to helpful information sources. You can also email us at info@princetongyn.com and we'd be happy to help you. Um, so I'm going to wrap it up a couple minutes early because it's summer and I want to go out and enjoy the beautiful day. The next episode of Gynecology is July 29th. I will be broadcasting from Lake Tahoe, which will be lovely, I hope. And it'll be about starting to think about that August getting her off to college, August, September. So 10 things that you, high school girls, need to know before you head to college, 10 things that college girls should know if you don't already, 10 things that grad students may have forgotten, and 10 things that moms can make sure their daughters know before they head off, or dads, of course. So I think it'll be a good one. Not sure yet who the guests will be. We'll have some surprises in store. And I really appreciate you taking the time to learn, to empower yourself. Knowledge is power. And I think in women's health, too few women really feel comfortable having enough knowledge to make good decisions for themselves. So I hope that won't be you. And again, this is Dr. Maria Sophocles from Gynecology saying good night and have a great next couple weeks. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.